Hey everybody, this is Ben Burnett, host of The Ben Burnett Show, a podcast on the Appen Media Network. My host today is Speaker Pro Tem Jan Jones, I'll actually just go ahead and do that again. Hey everybody, this is Ben Burnett, host of The Ben Burnett Show, a podcast on the Appen Media Network. My host today is no stranger to many people in North Fulton. Her name is Jan Jones. She is the Speaker Pro Tem of the Georgia State House of Representatives. Good morning, Jan.
Well, good morning, Ben.
How are you?
I'm doing wonderful.
So I have to ask you, so far with the people that I have had come on, you have one of the more unique stories because you're somebody who my neighbors and friends and people up here read in the big newspaper that comes from down in Dunwoody. How on earth did you even think to get started, and was politics in your blood from the time you were 15?
No, actually, I had never run for, class president. Had never even entered my mind to personally run for office. But I did always have a deep desire, almost to a flaw, to want to make my community better. And, I first started out in town, Atlanta. And after probably 10 years of just trying to work with the city government, work with the school boards.
Single, newly married with kids?
Newly married, and then with young children primarily. Trying to fix traffic issues in our community. On the Homeowners Association board, very active there. I finally realized I'm just not a constituent here. I just couldn't find anybody that would listen and actually take things to fruition and change it. So took our 4 kids, moved out here, thank goodness, probably 25 years ago.
And that was a risk into itself.
Yeah. We were going north of Perimeter, and I thought I was leaving that behind. I thought, well, I'm going to move to an idyllic area of Northwest Fulton where I don't have to feel compelled to do that. And moved our family to 7 acres on a gravel road on a hill, and thought we had found our respite from it.
And did.
And we did, but then I just immediately jumped in on issues and spent 2 years trying to take the totally unincorporated area of Northwest Fulton and annex it into Alpharetta, actually, and went neighborhood by neighborhood, speaking to homeowners groups and explaining how we needed some separation from Fulton County. And cityhood was not an option at that time. There was a state law that prohibited it.
And so you are one of the architects of the city of Milton.
That's right.
Sometime later.
That's right. So after 2 years, and Alpharetta said, thank you, but we're interested. We'll annex it over 20 years. And I thought, in 20 years, there won't be anything left to annex.
And you were right.
That's right. So an open seat came available for State House. I honestly didn't even think of it. It was a city council member at the time at Alpharetta who said, Jan, you ought to think about running for that seat.
Who was it?
It was Sandra.
Oh, really?
Yes. Sandra was the first person to mention that to me, and it never occurred to me. And so I ran, I won, and the next year introduced, just dreamed up the idea of if Sandy Springs is going to become a city, all of Northwest Fulton should be incorporated. And so introduced the city of Miltonville.
And how long was that? A relatively easy process? Were you involved in the referendum piece of that as a resident here?
Yes, it was actually very difficult. It was hard for the area and the existing cities to get used to the idea of, no more annexation playgrounds,
right,
to be frank. And but I think I feel very confident that Roswell, Alpharetta, have completely benefited from having, equal partners.
Sure.
In making sure that the area has excellent police, fire, and traffic management. I mean, to see the changes has been nothing short of incredible to me.
I do think that some of those surrounding cities, because I think Johns Creek probably took your playbook. I think that there are several of them that did. But we have honestly, around Alpharetta and in this part of North Fulton and Northwest Fulton, there are so many people that work out here that also live out here. It's really created its own micro economy. There are more jobs out here than there are people.
Well, what's been phenomenal is to see the job growth. And Alpharetta has been just unbelievably proactive on that front in making sure that we have excellent jobs where people can actually live, work, and play here.
Well, tell me this. How, in your first campaign, how much money did you spend?
A lot, actually.
Yeah, really?
And I had two excellent opponents who were, became friends of mine throughout the process. And I think we all spent probably close to $100,000.
Did you? But you had that activist network and the HOAs that you knew, and I'm sure somebody told you.
Somebody told me.
This is where you get $500 checks. These are where you get $1,000 checks.
That's right.
Yeah, I didn't really have that luxury. It's amazing to hear people that go through something like that their first time and fundraise, and it's obviously served you well in a leadership position in the House. Before we get there, talk about your early days down in the Georgia General Assembly. Did you fit in and stand out? Did you come in and just start making big splashes?
Success in the Georgia General Assembly is really contingent on making good relationships, because you're not the executive making the decision. It takes some, you got to get in the House. There's 180 of us. It's like a scrum on the floor, and you got to get to 91 votes. And so I really enjoy that. I like being collaborative, and I like building to a consensus that is somewhat aggressive. You sort of push the edge, but you take it where people would want to go. They just might not know it yet. And it has been really a delightful process, and I am really proud, actually, of some of the things I've accomplished.
Do you have the opportunity now in leadership to still go mix it up down there? Or do you have to remain above reproach?
Behind closed doors, I can. But I do feel a responsibility to, kind of keep it calm when I'm out in public.
Well, I want to get to something else that everybody here, if you're famous for any one thing besides creating the city of Milton, it's Milton County. Mm-hmm. In fact, somebody poked at me on Facebook last week and asked if we were going to have the orchestrator of Milton County at an event that we had all hosted together in the last couple of days. And I said, you should come. She'll be there. So talk to me about how that idea came up. Talk to me about where you dreamed it. Did living in Atlanta influence that at all? Where do you go, and do you think it's still a possibility? That's a bunch of questions to fit into one.
Well, I can't claim it was my idea. People had talked about it for years, including former state rep and former Speaker Pro Tem Mark Burkhalter. What I did was take and create a bill that I thought could pass. And what I've learned is I still think it's a good idea. Fulton County is too large to really be considered a local government. It's 80 miles long, and has 1/10 of the state's population, 1 million people out of 10 million. That is not local government when we have 159 counties. And I've said this more times than I care to remember, but Fulton County is larger in population than 6 individual states.
Sure.
The impediment, and it is a major impediment, is that I cannot get the votes. It requires a constitutional amendment, which requires a 2/3 vote in the House, 2/3 vote in the Senate, and then a statewide referendum. I believe we could pass a statewide referendum because I've fashioned legislation that would not affect anyone else in the state, but I cannot get the votes in the House at this point.
How many, if you have 180 and needed 120, how many are you short?
I'm probably short 10 votes.
And is it entirely partisan?
I would say it's 99% partisan. And I met with the former mayor of Atlanta once, Kasim Reed, and I suggested to him I thought it should be his idea, that it was such a good idea that Atlanta would in fact benefit more than North Fulton, because Atlanta, believe it or not, generates higher per capita property taxes and higher per capita sales taxes than North Fulton. But he just laughed. And I even committed in the legislation that previous commitments like MARTA and Grady would continue to be honored, and in fact would have to.
Sure.
Those decisions were made with us as a part of it. And
the greater region needs a Trauma One hospital. Absolutely.
And they do. And we do. And your other hospitals would agree. And but it comes down to partisan politics.
And so being 10 votes short might as well be more like 100.
That's right. You have to get to 120.
Well, this sounds like a good time to take a break. We'll be right back with Speaker Pro Tem Jane Jones.
Hey everybody, it's Hans. I wanted to take a quick moment to tell you about the sponsor of this episode, Strongside Solutions. I got a chance to meet Wendell Strickland, who is the president of the business, which is a human capital risk management consulting firm based right here in Georgia. He was telling me all about what they do and how they're helping companies, nonprofits, and local governments save literally millions of dollars on their healthcare plans. He told me an example of a very local case right down the street from us, actually, Kings Ridge Christian School. It's a large private school that many of you have probably heard of, and they have been a client of Strongside Solutions for 5 years. And so during that 5 years, Kings Ridge employees have received 0 increases, and the school has accumulated over $900,000 in operating reserves over the 5 years that they have worked with Wendell and his team. That is unheard of. But this is what Wendell and Strongside Solutions do all of the time, and they could do it for you too. Just give him a call. His number is 678-488-5702. Again, that's Wendell Strickland with Strongside Solutions, 678-488-5702, or visit strongsidesolutions.com for more information. And let him know you heard about them here on The Ben Burnett Show.
Welcome back in. Special thanks to my guest today, Jane Jones, Speaker Pro Tem of the House. So after that break, I want to talk to you about the aforementioned former mayor of Atlanta, Kasim Reed.
Mm-hmm.
How was your relationship with the leadership in the Democrat Party at the time? Because I know he wielded a pretty big stick in the General Assembly.
Yes, although when I served with him, he was in the minority party. And actually, we got along fine. And he was a fairly pragmatic legislator when he was in the Senate.
Would you say that somehow the politics of the city of Atlanta, when he went to that different job, became a little bit different of a leader?
Yes, definitely.
Well, tell me this. I know that you are guns blazing for the general election on Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel like your party is going to fare?
Well, in the House, we have 114 out of 180 seats, and I expect we'll come back about with that same amount. Might be a few different players, a few different seats, a few changes there, but I would expect we'll come pretty close to where we are now.
And do you feel like I know you keep tabs on the House and that's your job as in leadership. Do you feel like the state Senate will largely look the same as well?
I do. I think the Senate will probably primarily come back looking about the same.
So I'll ask you to the one everybody cares about. Oh, and I do want to ask you about Jeff Duncan, who sat under your leadership.
That's right.
And how do you maintain good contact with him?
Yeah, he's a great person and a great family, and will do an outstanding job as lieutenant governor. I do expect him to prevail on Tuesday. With no runoff. There's no libertarian in the race. I
have to be, you will probably not respond to this, but I was honestly knowing when I saw the field that it was Rick Jeffries and him and David Schaefer, I expected that there would be a runoff, and I thought he would be the one that didn't get into it. And I don't think I was alone. And so the campaign that guy ran was remarkable. And I think people appreciate those that get out there and work for it. You know, David Axelrod tells a story when he was talking to Barack Obama when he lost his congressional race. And he said, I'll wait until something comes around the first time. And Axelrod looked him dead square in the eye and said that the road to success in politics is littered with the carcasses of people who waited their turn.
That is true.
And so I think that is, he certainly didn't wait. Right.
It's also littered with those who didn't wait. I mean, most people don't succeed. So it's a long shot, just about every time.
I think that's really, it's really interesting to see those people like him, a guy who even in North Fulton was relatively anonymous, put together the campaign, good looking guy, well funded, seems to be pretty conservative. Like he represented his district in Forsyth County relatively well, but I do think that that's pretty remarkable that he was able to do it. And I'll get you to the big show now.
Okay.
Brian Kemp, November 7th, 12:30 a.m. What are you doing and what's the score?
I think I'll be in Athens at that point, and where his supporters will be. And I would imagine by then we will have the results, although Fulton County, is always so very, very late.
If they were separate counties, they would get the results faster.
Well, we certainly would in Milton. And but I'd be, government closer to the people, more nimble, more able to get things done. But I think that either, Brian edges it out on election day, or, gosh forbid, I think by a narrow margin, it's possible there could be a runoff because of the Libertarian. And
I do wonder if, knowing what happened with the Georgia 6 race here and how insane people became.
Yeah.
Are we gonna? Can the state of Georgia take 5 more weeks of this?
No, and actually, I think Ben, it's 4 weeks.
4 weeks.
But I do, and actually, let me say, I think I'm going to predict Brian edges it out on that night. I think that the level of enthusiasm to vote, we have a very stark difference in these two candidates. I do think in the end he will pull it off that night. But, it does show we have a very polarized electorate in Georgia.
Oh, absolutely. And I think anytime you get the multiplier and you get 3 people in a race, regardless of who that third person is, when you start asking somebody to take 1 out of every 2 votes plus 1, when you say it like that, it sounds almost impossible.
That's right.
So let me ask you this: as you move forward with your career here, what are your goals as Speaker Pro Tem? What do you want to get out of the remaining turnip down there at the General Assembly? If you had one thing you really wanted to do over the next 10 or 15 years, what would it be?
I'd like to see. I've worked a lot on K through 12 education and reforming that. I'd like to see, I'd like to take that interest and have actually in the last couple of years and work towards reforming higher ed more. It is incredibly important that every young person graduate high school, number one, and we still have about 18% that do not graduate from high school. And it is also equally important that they graduate ready to go to work or ready to go to higher education at some level. It could be a certificate, it could be a 2-year degree or a 4-year degree. A 4-year degree is absolutely not necessary for everyone. But some kind of training, whether during high school or post-high school, is very important for Georgia as a state to go to the next level and for young people to have a productive, happy future.
What do you think, record unemployment, the number one state to do business, this area is just an embarrassment of riches. What would you say to those people who don't feel like we have seen good leadership? What questions do you have? Because I candidly, when I hear the message and the vitriol out there, and the unhappiness, America's never, your average person's never had more money in their pocket.
Oh my gosh. I mean, we're so very blessed and should be so very grateful to be born, to be an American and to live in the country that has the greatest opportunity in the world. And sometimes, I think folks take it for granted. And this is the land of opportunity. I grew up modest family and never, and I'm not, saying I'm so successful. I just would say have had every opportunity. Now I had to work for it. It wasn't always handed to me. But the fact that in Georgia, every single young person can attend 2 years at a technical college largely free. I mean,
absolutely.
Truly.
Yeah.
The tuition after the Hope Grant at a technical college is truly, truly small. And for 17 programs, it's zero.
Well, and one of the things that I think that, and you may be able to take this down there, I would love to see the Hope Scholarship change, not necessarily with respect to discounting that 4-year education, but if you take every summer that you had between your freshman year, your senior year in high school to the time you graduated from college, you can do both. Mm-hmm. And I think to have people that know how to run spreadsheets,
right,
and know the business acumen and how to market a product, that also know how to weld or code or
that's right. And then you can open your own business if you want to.
And should.
Right.
This state, this country is very favorable to people who own their own business, and it should be.
Right. Right.
And so I don't know. I'll plant that seed, because if Hope had those technical colleges are seeing more traction, but they're also starved for attention.
That is true.
And I think that how do you make that transition? Because taking somebody from what I would say is the last 10 years is probably the highest number of people that will ever go to a 4-year school, the boomer kids.
Right. And still the majority do not ever complete a degree.
And it's attainable. And the useful skills in this country, we would be so much better served from a workforce perspective, because if you're 55, as you're stepping away from the workforce, we have tremendous gaps from the skills and services that people are going to provide. This country will look very different in 10 years from what people are able to do and how technology changes things.
That's right.
How would you, so as you evaluate the next 10 years, any ambition to run for higher office?
I just take it a day at a time.
That is so coach speak.
It is so coach speak. No, that's actually the truth. I never thought I'd run for office to begin with. I don't plan to be in office the rest of my life. I have a private life. I like my life. I enjoy being with my husband, traveling, and our young adult children. And have some business interests on the side that take time. But certainly in the short term, I won't say long term. In the short term, if the good people of House District 47 see fit to reelect me on November 6th, and also for the next few years, I'll put my nose to the grindstone and go to work for them.
That is so. She just winked at me because she knew she dodged that question like an absolute pro.
Enough said.
Well, Speaker Pro Tem Jan Jones, I hope you come back. I'd love to talk to you before, as you guys get organized as a caucus. should you win re-election. I would love to talk to you to see what you guys feel like the battlefield looks like before you go into 40 days at General Assembly, and maybe you're going to have a special session before then or not. But I am a firm believer that I'd always heard until I met you that you're a unicorn. We know you're out there, and we know you're special, but you're elusive. And so I would like to have you anytime.
Well, thank you.
It's been really fun.
From a non-special person. Thank you.
Well, we'll catch up with you guys next week, and thanks for tuning into the Ben Burnett Show. Have a great day.
I know everything and I miss you so much.